Source is a podcast made by women for women. We're looking at the topics that are influencing women and the world they live in, and we're shedding a light on those topics. We're speaking with the national experts. We're bringing you the stories you're only going to hear here. Don't miss out on being in the know. Subscribe to Soul Source wherever you listen to podcasts today and leave us a review. This part's really important. That way we can continue to bring you the content you love each and every week. So buckle up, Soul Source Society, because we're about to get started.
The kind of crazy thing about it is how much of the division is actually not based on the reality of our political differences or the differences in our political opinions. Study after study shows that we are misperceiving the actual divide.
I am Raquel Amel, and today's episode is about the United States and how Democrats and Republicans need to find a way to reach a middle ground. Now, we've become so divided in this country, almost to the point that we're not even listening to each other anymore. Not only does this make getting legislation passed next to impossible, it's tearing families apart in our nation on what some are calling the brink of a Cold War. Political polarization is not new. It's been happening in the United States for the past 2 decades, making this a problem way before 2016 when Donald Trump came on the scene. It just seems that within recent months here, this has just kind of reached a new level. This polarization has birthed the creation of a new national group whose only focus is at the grassroots level to build unity within the U.S. This group is called Braver Angels. Braver Angels aims to restore civic trust in the United States, heal the wounds between the left and the right, and challenge institutions to be better, building community together and discovering what it means to be American in this day and age. They're really trying to unite the country through programs that allow people to listen to each other's point of view. My guest today is Monica Guzman. She is the senior media advisor for Braver Angels, and she is the host of Crosscuts Northwest Newsmakers. Monica, welcome to Soul Source today.
Hey, nice to be here.
We're excited to have you, and I want to preface this with, we were talking a little bit earlier, and there was a little bit of noise in the background. What do you got going on today? Because we're all at home. It's still pandemic living here in the U.S.
Yeah, there's construction in my backyard. We're getting stairs built from our deck to the ground, which makes it easier to occasionally see 1 or 2 friends masked at 6 feet distance on our deck, and they can actually climb up there without having to go through our house. So you may hear a drill or two, but I've moved to a cozy place that hopefully is a little bit farther away.
Yeah, we're hoping we cut the sound out a little bit, but just in case you do hear a hammer or a drill, we just got construction going on. It's okay.
Yep, no big deal.
So, Monica, we're talking about Braver Angels, and I gave a real high-level organizational, what it is, but you're in it every day. So give me more of what Braver Angels is. How did it get its name?
Mm-hmm. So Braver Angels is one of the largest de-polarization organizations in the United States. It is largely volunteer-run. We have chapters that we call alliances all over the country. There's new ones cropping up all the time that gather people into groups and workshops and conversations that seek not only to bridge divides, but to depolarize even within, to help us understand how the psychology of our media environment and the way we tend to talk to each other makes it, particularly hard and sometimes even toxic to understand people across divides. So we believe that it's one of the, if not the biggest problem facing our society right now, this inability to see clearly across divides so that we can continue to have the conversation that this country's been having for centuries about how you make a good society.
So in your opinion, how divided do you think the United States is right now when it comes to these political points of view?
So there's clearly a lot of political disagreement.
Yes.
A lot of it is policy-based. We see it in just in the news. We see it in anytime people want to bring up politics. But the kind of crazy thing about it is how much of the division is actually not based on the reality of our political differences or the differences in our political opinions. Study after study shows that we are misperceiving the actual divide. It's called false polarization. So false polarization is actually one of the most significant drivers of the animosity, the toxicity between the red and the blue political side. It's the misperceptions about what the other side thinks rather than the reality.
That's a great point, because perception becomes reality, right? You perceive things, and the way that you perceive them becomes the way that you realistically think they are. So even if it's not reality, when is the last time you personally have seen this much division or perceived division in the United States?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, never, right? Like my lifetime, I'm 38 years old. This is about as bad as it's gotten since I've been around. I was born in Mexico, and
Okay.
came to the States when I was like 5 or 6. And then my parents became citizens in the year 2000. So I have been an American citizen for 21 years. And I've been a journalist most of that time as well. So it's been great to be a journalist and be able to tell stories that in and of themselves can help people understand each other. What I've noticed in the last few years, especially, is how much more difficult it is for stories to even have that impact anymore, because there are these walls we've built between groups of people, and for stories and experiences and people's sort of lives to climb over those walls has become so hard that that's why I am now involved in Braver Angels. Because as a journalist, as a storyteller, I feel like I can't do my job until we start to figure out these basic human divisions and learn to overcome them.
That is so interesting because I'm a former journalist myself, and so I definitely feel that. Like it just feels so polarized, and it's like you try to represent both sides, and it's almost like when you represent both sides, somebody still says, "Well, you didn't give this side enough time or that side enough time." It's just, oh my goodness. So if we keep down this path of being so polarized like this, what do you think the problem is? What happens?
Yeah, we're already seeing it. I think that America and any good society is healthiest when we can have the forces of persuasion hold sway, meaning you and I can come together and talk about a particular issue and in a reasonable way deliberate about what the best solution might be and take into account different stakeholders' positions and on and on. But right now, what we have is a division, again, that is so toxic and so much animosity coming in that it's almost impossible to even gather the diverse points of view that actually represent real American life and then have all those points of view be in conversation. When you lose that, again, you lose the influence of persuasion. What takes the place of persuasion? Mobilization. And that's what you see today. Many of our politicians are more incentivized to mobilize the extreme sides of their base that they can count on for, like, to be out there and to protest and to do whatever it takes and vote. And like, that's great. But when it's about mobilization instead of persuasion, you don't need to work with the rest of the country. You just need to win from your side of things. So as long as that's the case, this is not going to feel like one country. It's not going to feel like a place where we're ultimately on the same team. Disagreement is part of democracy, and that will never go away. But disagreement should be productive. Disagreement should make both sides' ideas better. And instead, what we have is both sides' ideas just in trenches getting worse because they're not checked by the good instincts of the other side.
Exactly. There's no checking and balancing here going on, and no listening. So Braver Angels is actually trying to bring red and blue together. How are you guys doing that?
So the main thing that I love to talk about is that within Braver Angels, these principles hold sway. So red and blue leadership and balanced leadership, 50-50 within the organization, is really important. You won't see that in a lot of organizations. And we extend that spirit to everything we do. So there's workshops that Braver Angels holds. These happen at a small scale. You sign up to the red blue workshop, for example, where it's a group of political blues and a group of political reds, led through structured conversations designed to help you kind of hijack your own reaction to the other side and really sit back and listen. And you even are invited to criticize your own side, which once
Wow.
both sides do that, it becomes a lot easier to hear the other one. When we acknowledge, yeah, there are some stereotypes about blues that are based on some kernels of truth. There are some stereotypes about reds as well. But that's why this is like, we have to strike a good balance. So you come out of the red blue workshop with the volume turned down on all of these things, and everything in your political landscape. The next time you watch the TV news or whatever it is, you're going to notice that difference. My parents did the red blue workshop, and it influenced their behavior. My mom is spending less time like on Facebook deep into the night, on all the articles that kind of, boil her blood. And my dad just stopped listening to so much radio and like doing all of that because he noticed this has blown things way out of proportion. When I talk to real people on the other side, they don't reflect what I see in the media at all. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is such a good point. And there's something else that you guys do. You guys actually have debates, and I can only imagine that those have to get a little heated from time to time. So how do you keep those from going like totally off the rails?
Yeah, the debates are, I think, one of the most impressive things. Not easy to create, and I really credit April Lawson is the head of Braver Angels debates, and she's a genius. So these debates they're obviously virtual right now, and there's people from all over the country to come together, and there are resolutions that are about timely issues. Right now, we've done it everything from defunding the police to the COVID lockdowns to, I mean, you name it, right? There's been a debate about it. And those debates are really aiming right, like ground zero of red blue stuff. But the structure of them invites someone to give a speech in the affirmative, someone to give a speech in the negative about the resolution, and then questions from people in the room about any of those. But the questions must be addressed to the speaker. A fun little nugget where you don't say, how can you think that? You go, I would like to ask the speaker how he thinks, blah, blah, blah. And there's all these little mechanisms in the debate that, again, keep the volume turned to a sustainable level. Do things get heated? Absolutely. And in fact, Braver Angels encourages heat so long as it's honest. We believe that we need to fight right about politics. It's not about being nice. That's not what civility is truly about. It's about being open and being open to, well, we're all probably wrong about something, and we don't know what we're wrong about. And we can't be that certain, particularly in a divided time, that we have all the answers. Of course we don't. Plus, we live in these silos, right? Like the Facebooks and the Twitters and the Googles of the world keep giving us what they know is going to keep us on their platforms for longer, which is stuff we already agree with. And science has shown us that the more you surround yourself with opinions you agree with, the more extreme your opinions become. So the only way that we stay smart and sharp is to actually expose ourselves to different perspectives. So the Braver Angels debates are an incredible way to do that. And I would recommend it to everybody.
Do you ever hear people say that they're changing their points of view when they come out of these events, that it's shifted? I mean, you talked a little bit about your parents, how they changed, but, just in general?
So at the end of every debate, there's time left. The debates are broken into breakout rooms of manageable sizes so everyone can speak within a room. And you go around and you ask, what did you take away from this debate? I think that people misunderstand changing minds. We believe that people can change their minds as a result of a conversation, and that's just not true. People change their minds on their own time, on their own terms. So what you look for isn't a complete conversion, which is really hard, but what you look for is instead some opening, some new insight, something they hadn't seen that way before. And so I hear that constantly. Every time I'm at a debate, I hear something from the other side that makes me go, I'll give you an example that didn't come from a debate, but from a red-blue workshop. The issue of climate change. I'm a political blue. The issue of climate change on the red-blue divide is obviously very fraught. And the Reds in my red-blue workshop articulated so beautifully that the thing that they often react to isn't the actual content of climate science or whatnot. It's the alarmism. Often conservatives will, like, if they hear that something has to drastically change right now and blues are just like agitating for it, they're skeptical of that. They're skeptical of alarmism and drastic change. And when I heard that, I was like, that makes so much sense. And I never thought of it that way. Like, yes, okay. So it's more about, can people have I never thought of it that way moments? And can we inspire those moments across a divide at Braver Angels debates and events? And the answer is absolutely. I think most people come away from those experiences thinking about things a different way. Will those openings lead to a complete change of perspective on an issue? Possibly, but it happens again silently in our minds. It's a beautiful process that can take months or years.
You're opening those neural pathways just a little bit, just enough to start seeing different points of view, which is all we need right now. So if you could give listeners tips, and maybe it's not even specific to Braver Angels, just tips in general on how to try to get along or at least hear other sides so families stop dividing. Because I personally, within my own family, this has happened a little bit. So I'm speaking from experience when I say that, it can be hard when people don't even want to hear each other. What are some tips that you could give our listeners just to try to just be able to listen to each other?
Yeah. So I can give many. I'll focus on at least one category, which is validation. So me and my mother is red. And we have incredible conversations about politics. And people often ask me, how the heck do you do that? How do you do that? Doesn't make any sense. She voted for Trump, me, Biden, and yet we stayed very close, hours long conversations about race over the summer, et cetera. And I've asked my mom several times, what do you think makes it work? Because I keep hearing, it's obviously very hard for people. And she says, what you and I do for each other is we validate, we tell each other when we've made good points. And I think that's extremely wise and profound, because we usually come into conversations with people we disagree with our shields up. So when you come in shields up, you don't acknowledge when there's any traction at all in the conversation. And it's good to remember that conversation is really powerful and magical when it's sort of like, people coming together to just explore the things that are at the boundaries of who they are. Like, conversation can be very messy and very fun, but it is an unrehearsed intellectual adventure. That's a quote from a philosopher, Michael Oakeshott, that I love. But yeah, it's like anytime that you are in a team at work or any project you're working on, if you don't celebrate the small wins, if you don't communicate to others working with you that, oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I never thought of it that way. Thanks for that. Or, hold on, wow, that's making me uncomfortable. Let me think about this. And let me tell you why. If you don't flag those things that are actually like landing with you in any way, then why should you continue? Right? So what we tend to do is we come in shields up, and that's it. Like, we're fighting. So if something you said actually makes a little bit of sense to me, not that I agree with it, but it actually landed in a small way, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to admit it, because it's a battle, right? So I'm supposed to put on this face of, you cannot change my mind because I am a woman of conviction. And that's how we come into these conversations. So what that means is that we do not work towards getting traction with each other, but you need traction in order to slowly calibrate your minds together. And again, that doesn't mean you're trying to agree. All it means is that you're seeing each other's story. You're seeing each other's perspective more fully. And that's a magic moment. People are afraid that if you even talk to someone who sees things very differently, you validate their ideas. But I don't believe that's true. I think what you do is you validate them as people. That's it. And you can decide what to do with the ideas, but let those ideas out and let your ideas mix and mingle with them. And you'll be surprised where that will go.
So what type of a person then do you think is a good fit to be a part of Braver Angels? Because I assume at the very minimum, you have to be somebody who's willing to change, who's willing to hear another side and a point of view. So what does that person look like? Who's the ideal candidate?
Yeah, the willingness to hear is very important. What I will say is, I don't even think you need like a full dedication to the willingness to hear. I think you just need enough curiosity that you're willing to not be quite so certain anymore. It's a suspension of certainty. And so you come in and you leave a little bit of that open space enough that you can hear, again, real people on the other side, instead of the media caricatures of the extremes on the other side, which are leading to all these misperceptions. So I think the people look like anyone. Red, blue, I mean, we've got it all. I think we often see some of the people who come are the ones for whom the divisions hold high stakes in their lives. You mentioned this is affecting your family relationships. We have a lot of people for whom this affects their family relationships, where for one reason or another, you can't ignore this anymore. We also have people who just, on an intellectual level, know that something is broken, like know that something's wrong. People who, I talked to a blue that's new to Brave Angels just the other day, who said, I don't know any reds. I just don't know any reds. And she can tell that she's missing something, right? And so Brave Angels can help her fill that little gap. So instead of just being certain that her side is completely right and there's no point listening to those evil reds, she comes to Brave Angels because, well, here's a way to actually access human beings on that side. Again, rather than the caricatures, which are being thrown at us all over.
That's really interesting. How is Braver Angels, do you guys do anything to try to reach people who maybe still have that shield up, that maybe don't want to be so open? Because you mentioned having like that, just that little nugget of curiosity. If someone isn't that, are you guys doing anything to try to bridge that gap?
That's a great question. Those are ongoing conversations, because it's not surprising, right, that the people who are most easily drawn to something like Braver Angels are the people who are already practiced, maybe in like they've already seen something on the other side that makes them curious or what have you. It is definitely harder to get people who are more on the extremes, like very progressive or very right, to want to have these conversations. So we're still wondering as a national organization, what are the best ways to reach them? But over the summer, we had campaigns that were specifically focused on certain groups. We had a month that was all about Trump voters, and really trying to like reach out to them, bring more of them into our Braver Angels podcast, where we try to host conversations that show the welcoming nature of the whole organization. We had another month that was African Americans and progressive African Americans, and like, because there are these polarities, aren't there? Like part of division is that certain groups seem like they are about as far away as you can get, right? And there's this thing around Trump voters and Black Americans. And wow, right? So it's like we're conscious of that. We're conscious that some people find it easier to find common ground because they actually are a bit closer psychologically, or the way that the divides are painted in our society puts them a little bit closer to each other. But then for others, the understanding is a lot harder, and the politics are so personal. And so those are puzzles that we can't solve on our own, right? We need everybody in on it, and that's ultimately what it's going to be. Is no organization is going to solve this. This is a broad social project with a lot of time and a lot of work ahead. So I'm really glad you asked that question, because that is absolutely a challenge.
Now, for people who are listening to this, they might be like, okay, this sounds cool. What does it cost? There's got to be a cost associated. So can you tell me, is there a cost associated with this organization first and foremost?
So you can access everything we do for free. If you want to support the organization, it's a whopping $12 a year for a membership.
Wow.
That's it. So yeah, you do not pay for our workshops. You do not pay for our debates. Everything is completely open, and that is absolutely by design, because you cannot, we need to have as open arms as possible, because there are so many reasons not to try to bridge divides. There's so many reasons to tell yourself that you know all the answers, you have everything you need, and that there are monsters over there, or what have you, for whatever your reason is. So we want to make it as easy as possible for as soon as you are curious to take a first step in, and then have your own journey. So many of our workshops, again, it's about the individual experience. They're closed rooms where we have alliances all over the place. The organization is so big and spread out. I don't know most of the people that are in it, right? But we all just have a common conviction that we need to work on this problem, and we can't just hope that politicians or others are just going to solve it for us. Like, we are the people of America, and this is our work.
And so if someone wants to pay that $12 a year, because that's going to break the bank, so what is the value in being a paid member?
There are some members meetings. If you're more interested in the direction of the organization, we definitely invite you to be part of that. But largely it's just knowing that you're supporting something that we hope you agree is one of the biggest problems in America right now, and that you're supporting a group of volunteers that are doing a lot of this work out of a sense of hope and determination. So it's mostly that.
So if somebody wants to get involved in one of these events, how do they do that?
So go to braverangels.org. We have an events section that lays out the full menu of stuff, and you'll find, I think, a lot of things that will surprise you. It's quite a suite of offerings that we're very proud of, and we're always developing and trying to improve. So check it out. If all you want, here's actually a fun thing. If all you want is to talk to somebody on the other side, we have a way that you can sign up for doing one-on-one conversations. That's it. You just get matched with someone on the other side who also raised their hand and said, I want to talk to someone on the other side. So we match reds and blues for individual conversations that can really change people. So even if all you want is just that private interaction, you can do it. If you want to tune into a debate that like goes down and dirty with a really critical divisive issue right now, then sign up for our upcoming debate. Hundreds of people fit, so we have space. And yeah, there's a whole heck of a lot of things. So it can be more private and personal. It can be more open and social. And yeah, we hope you get something awesome out of it.
And if people are just looking to get a flavor, right? Maybe they're not committed to, I don't want to get into a conversation just yet. You guys have a podcast and they can kind of hear the kind of what you guys do. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, the podcast has been really fun to watch grow. One of the things that's been so neat is the folks that come on the podcast. We've had some, Matt Taibbi, Jonathan Haidt, some pretty amazing thinkers who are looking at this larger issue. We talk to people from all kinds of sectors too, philanthropy to religion, because we acknowledge the role that faith plays for a lot of folks in division and in compassion. Oh man, it's really hard to even describe, but it's like anyone who's out there with great ideas, good perspectives to help us kind of work our way through and troubleshoot these things comes on the Braver Angels podcast. We have amazing hosts, John Wood, Kieran O'Connor. Yeah, so definitely if you want a taste of that, go to our Braver Angels podcast. Just go to YouTube and search for Braver Angels, our channel, and you'll see the recent talks. Yeah, so see what you get, and that is a really good way to do the flavor and the first step, and then check out a debate and then see where you go from there.
So my last question for you, Monica, is if people are listening to this interview right now and there is one piece of information that they get to walk away with today, what is the most important thing you want people to take away from this interview? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but
I guess I would say trust your gut. I think that most people in this country, no matter how devoted they are to their political side, right, and fighting the good fight, which there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. We know we always need fighters. We need that. And many people in Braver Angels are also fighters. Trust your gut that something is broken. And trust yourself that you can be part of the solution. I think that we often forget. We think that we're powerless. We see the big movers and shakers out there, and we think that everything is in their hands, and it's just not. Like, our society is ours. So I really believe that. I think that everyone kind of feels that seed in their soul and in their heart that we can do better when we talk about all these things, and that we are each missing so much that we could access if we bust down these walls that we've built between us, that things would just flow, good things would flow. So trust your gut on that. Yeah, no matter what, no matter what some of the voices around you will say.
That is some great advice, Monica. And this was a great conversation. I think this is going to help a lot of people. So thank you for taking the time to talk with me today and to just talk about ways that we can try to unite and come together as a country.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for listening. And if you want to hear more Soul Source, subscribe to the show. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. And if there's something you want us to talk about, we can do that too. We have a page. It's on Facebook. It's called the Soul Source Society. And it's where we interact with listeners. We get content ideas for future shows. We talk about past content. And overall, we just have a lot of fun. That's Soul Source Society on Facebook. We hope to see you there. Soul Source is brought to you by Red Shoes, Inc., a leading agency that specializes in crisis and strategic communications, media relations, social media, and so much more. To learn more about Soul Source and Red Shoes, visit us at redshoesinc.com.